Unless you've been living under a rock, you've no doubt heard of critical race theory, or CRT. Maybe you're inclined to support CRT, or at least not oppose it, as a way of personally adjusting for America's past. Or maybe you dismiss it as the latest invention of bored academics in their ivory towers. Both reactions would be wrong. Why? Because CRT is coming for our kids. And as a parent, Chantel Cooper recently pointed out to the Loudoun County School Board, and I quote, "Critical race theory is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color," end quote. Chantel's right. But CRT is much more ominous than most people think. It's a worldview, an orthodoxy that threatens the very underpinnings of Western civilization. CRT advances the same old tread-worn goal of Marxism, but with new labels. Bourgeoisie and proletariat are replaced with oppressor and oppressed. In CRT, slavery may no longer control our bodies, but it still controls our minds. CRT demands that we hold on to slavery, no matter the form, so that we may remain in bondage. It perpetuates that system. CRT pushes a new form of class warfare based on self-serving and contrived definitions of privilege and victimhood. If you're white, heterosexual, cisgendered, native-born, and able-bodied, then you're a member of the oppressor class, whether you knew it or not. Denying it only proves it so. But if you're in one of the ever-expanding and intersecting spheres of victimhood, you're a member of the oppressed. Just how oppressed you are depends on your assumed identities, whether based on race, sexual orientation, gender, or immigration status. Are you white-skinned but lesbian? Then you're among the oppressed. Are you black-skinned and female? You're even more oppressed. This is called intersectionality. It measures degrees of oppression. Under CRT and the concept of intersectionality, the more victim categories you self-identify with, the greater moral authority you have, and the less responsibility. Can you see how dangerous this thinking is? CRT enables self-defined victim groups to loot stores and burn down our cities with impunity. The charge of systemic racism is simply a Trojan horse, the nail upon which the deeper agenda can be more easily hung. CRT foments guilt for sins not committed and envy for accomplishments not earned. It rejects the historical moral contests America has faced and prevailed over in its long struggle against bigotry and sin, like the abolitionist movement, the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, and the Civil Rights Movement. Understand that the goal of CRT is to overturn what it considers oppressive Western values, like individual liberty, e pluribus unum, and especially in God we trust. Under CRT, liberation theology replaces liberal democracy. Individual rights are sacrificed for group demands, equal opportunity for equal outcomes, the nuclear family for the village, and objective truth for people's personal narratives based on their intersecting degrees of victimhood. Left unchallenged, CRT will lead inevitably toward a total collapse of society. If you're wondering how we got here, CRT is a brand of rehashed Marxism. Rehashed because Marx's prediction that the West would inevitably succumb to economic class warfare never materialized. Instead, Western societies, even loosely based on a biblical worldview, advanced and prospered beyond Marx's imagining. Not to be deterred, his later disciples, men like Max Horkheimer and Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School, and with help from the Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci, believed that if the West was ever to adopt Marxism, all its critical institutions had to first be compromised. Its centers of commerce, academia, the media, and of course, all primary, secondary education. From the inevitable and ensuing chaos, people would not only accept a system of more centralized control, they demand it. The Frankfurt School may be gone, but its ideological descendants are all around us. People like Robin DiAngelo, Richard Delgado, Ibram X. Kendi, and BLM co-founders Patricia Cullors and Alicia Garza, to name a few. DiAngelo believes that individualism is corrosive and that Western education is the racist belly of the beast. Delgado advocates for jury nullification to remedy racial wrongs and ethnic identification over American unity. Kendi considers racism and capitalism as conjoined twins. Cullors proudly declared that both she and BLM co-founder Garza are trained Marxists. It's one thing for academics and CRT activists to embrace Marxism. Forcing it upon our nation's children is something else altogether. But that's what's happening. With help from state legislators, activist teachers, and unions, the apostles of critical race theory are pushing CRT-based curricula on our nation's children, and with astonishing speed. From Buffalo to Cupertino, white children are being taught how to deconstruct their whiteness and to accept that any success they've achieved will be unearned because of their privilege. Black kids are being taught to believe that they're helpless victims and to mistrust their peers. Both are taught to reject capitalism and embrace a Marxist form of economic and social collectivism. As just one example, in California's version of CRT, the state's ethnic studies framework sets out to reshape the minds of our children by addressing power structures and forms of oppression, critiquing empire building and its relationship to white supremacy, challenging cis-heteropatriarchy and anti-indigeneity, Islamophobia and transphobia, exploring the histories, struggles, and triumphs of the LGBTQ community, and placing high value on ancestral knowledge, including guiding children in pagan chants to Aztec and Mayan gods. But CRT transcends ethnic studies curricula or any specific course offering. As a pedagogy, CRT is a way of teaching meant to be taught across the entire range of K through 12 subject matter disciplines. Nearly 80 years ago, in 1943, the Supreme Court agreed to hear West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, a case where a group of Jehovah's Witnesses challenged the state's then practice of forcing children to salute the American flag. Bear in mind that this was in the middle of World War II, against Nazi aggression, a time of passionate and heightened nationalism. Notwithstanding, in its ruling, the court declared, and I quote, "If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe which shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or matters of opinion, or for citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. If there are any circumstances which permit an exception, they do not now occur to us." End quote. If compelling homage to the Stars and Stripes is a form of state orthodoxy, critical race theory is far, far more so. Indeed, a more nihilistic and destructive orthodoxy would be hard to invent. It's time to stop it before it's too late. I'm Mark Little for Protect Our Kids.